my friend, Colonel Roy Rockwell. Colonel Rockwell is the commander of Delta 6, which is headquartered at Schriever Air Force Base. And for those of you that don't know, it used to be the 50th Network Operations Group. So you know, with the advent of Space Force, things have been renamed and it is now Delta 6. He is responsible for nearly 1,000 active duty military, government, civilian, and contract personnel that provide space and cyberspace access through the $6.8 billion Air Force Satellite Control Network, while providing critical information to the nation's warfighters through the Global Broadcast Service. Colonel Rockwell is a two-time graduating squadron commander, having commanded the 561st Network Operations Squadron and the 386th Expeditionary Communications Squadron. He also has completed staff assignments with the United States Africa Command, Headquarters Air Force, and 3 other major commands. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Rockwell.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Vanessa. I'm excited to be here. I go by Rocky. Most of you guys know me by Rocky, but my first name is Roy, but I'll go by either one. Hey, you is fine. So as Vanessa pulls up the screens there, I'd like to introduce the 61st Cyberspace Squadron Director, Mr. Shane Swinson. He's sitting here off to my left. And he's just going to be here to provide moral support and help me answer any of the questions we have. He's been involved in this for the last, what, 5 years? So he has a lot of depth and details on some of the history that's gone on. So with that, as you look at this screen here, that emblem there on your right is the new Space Delta 6 emblem, fresh off the presses. It kind of brings back our legacy of what we grew out of. As Vanessa mentioned, we grew out of the 50th Network Operations Group and providing the Air Force Satellite Control Network. We've dropped the Air Force portion of that, and we just call it the Satellite Control Network now, so SCN. Our purpose, our why, is sitting there between those 2 parentheses: dominate space access and cyberspace. So we really have 2 multi-missions here in Delta 6 beyond just cyberspace. With the 6, we kind of inherited that from our roots out of the Air Force communications career field. But our focus is strictly operational. And I'll talk more about that as we get into the slides. So, next slide. So just kind of at the macro level, a little bit, everybody's familiar with General Raymond, who's the CSO for the Chief of Space Operations. Within that framework, we've stood up 3, well, we haven't stood them up yet. There are 3 field commands that will stand up in the future. The Space Operations Command will be the first command to formally stand up, and that'll be next week on the 21st of October. Everything in Space Command or Space Force right now is pretty fluid, and it changes pretty quickly. We've tentatively had that stand up 2 previous times, and they were both canceled. Much of this depends on Congress and the approval of GO officer billets. So the Space Operations Command is dependent on that as well. But as we stand that up, there's 2 other field commands that will stand up at some point in the future. The Space Systems Command, which is formally today is known as Space and Missiles Command. And then there's the Space Training and Readiness Command. That currently is a provisional Delta, or as we like to say, Space Delta 1 at this time. That will eventually stand up as a 2-star field command. The field commands are equivalent to the Air Force major commands. And then below that, we have Delta commands. And as you look at our structure, you can see we've removed the numbered air forces, we've removed the wings and the groups. And so we go straight from our field commands to the Delta commands. And from the Air Force perspective, those are considered wing equivalents. There are a couple of other commands called garrison commands. Those commands provide mission support to the mission deltas. So today, as the 50th NOG commander, I had mission support responsibility for a number of locations across the globe. Today, I only have operational requirement. I only own the operations of those missions. The mission support piece belongs to the garrison commands. So for example, the Buckley Garrison and Peterson-Triever Garrison are the first two to stand up. So next slide. So within the Space Operations Command, I mentioned there are 9 deltas and 2 garrison commands, Peterson-Triever Garrison Command, and then the Buckley Garrison Command. Delta 9 is located at Peterson-Triever Garrison. It does orbital warfare. Delta 2, Space Domain Awareness. It's located at Peterson-Triever Garrison. Delta 4 is Missile Warning. It's located at Buckley Garrison. Delta 3 is Space Electronic Warfare. It's located at Peterson-Triever Garrison. And then Delta 8 does SATCOM, NAVWAR, PNT. They're located at Peterson-Triever Garrison. And then, of course, Delta 6, which we're all really here to talk about and get into the details on what's going on in Delta 6 and the U.S. Space Force. Delta 7 is the ISR command. It also is located at Peterson-Triever Garrison. And then Delta 5 is our command and control Delta, and it's located out at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And then I've already mentioned the Star Delta Provisional, which will eventually stand up into a field command some point in the future. So next slide. Here's how we're organized within Space Delta 6. This is our mission, vision, and our initial scope of responsibility. We have 5 squadrons today, 3 of them focused on satellite control network. That would be 21, 22, and 23 SOPs. 21 SOPs is located out of Vandenberg, 22 SOPs is here at Peterson-Triever Garrison, and 23 SOPs is located out at New Boston Air Station. So I'll break it down a little bit. For my commander that works out at New Boston, he's also the base commander out there. So he has split duties to the Peterson-Triever Garrison and to myself. Peterson-Triever Garrison owns all the mission support portions of that mission for New Boston Air Station. I own the operational piece. And it seems to be working out really well. So he really has 2 bosses, although administratively he reports to me and operationally he reports to me. Then we have the 2 new cyberspace squadrons that stood up. All of this happened on 24 July. So it's pretty recent. 61st Cyberspace Squadron, which is led by Mr. Shane Swinson as a director. And then we have the 62nd Cyberspace Squadron up at Buckley that's led by Lieutenant Colonel Ray Bruschier. And he's gonna talk to you next month about all the great things that are going on at the tactical level as we stand up MDTs and how they're performing mission defense or DCO space on the SBIRS mission system. They're doing some great things up there. They've built an MDT playbook, which basically takes a comm squadron and walks a comm squadron through what it takes to transition to be a no kidding cyberspace squadron. And I'll talk more about that here in just a minute as we get to the next slide. So our mission really is to provide assured space access and defensive cyberspace operations for the national space enterprise and joint warfighters. It's very niche. And when I say cyberspace operations, I'm strictly talking about defensive cyber operations for space mission systems. We don't do any admin Genter. We don't even operate any SIPR or NIPRNet for the Space Force. That all belongs to the mission support group. And today that falls in the laps of the comm squadrons that will eventually transition to be cyberspace squadrons in the future. Our vision then is to be the premier leader of space access and cyber defense. Our initial scope of responsibility is we've got some challenges ahead on the satellite control network as the orbital warfare delta stands up. We're going to run out of capacity on that ground station network real quick. Today we're sitting at about 78% capacity for the SCN. When Space Delta 9 launches their first satellite, we'll be sitting at 98% capacity on the SCN. So some significant challenges ahead as we're working with the SPOC and the Space Force staff to grow capacity on the SCN side. On the cyberspace side, we're really focused on developing our MDTs, primarily within 6-1, 6-2 cyberspace squadrons, laying out the pathway for other cyberspace squadrons or comm squadrons today to transition to be cyberspace squadrons. And then the Space Force CSSP, which is a primary focus, and we'll talk more about that in the next couple slides. Next slide. So as you look at this, there's significant challenges that lie ahead for us. I've kind of talked about the space access operations. Not much of that has changed, other than we're going to run into challenges from a capacity. From the cyberspace operations, there's so much going on right now with the transition of the cyberspace workforce from the Air Force to the Space Force. We're transitioning over 1,200 Air Force cyberspace personnel that will transition to the Space Force in the February timeframe. Right now, that's projected for 1 February. We've already made the selections for the E8s, E9s, and the officers. Those lists will be released here sometime in October. The E7 and belows those boards are going to be held in November, and that list is due to be released sometime projected prior to Christmas. That's a whole change of a new career field. We're going to bring 3 Deltas over from the Air Force and transition them into 1 Deltas. And what does a 1 Delta look like? I will tell you that many of you who have served in the cyberspace career field saw the transition from the 2 Es and 3 Charlies to 3 Deltas. That was a little bumpy. We're hoping to make this transition from 3 Deltas to 1 Deltas less bumpy. But there's significant challenges, because it goes from being a more mission support, communications focused, to a no-kidding operational mindset that we want our 1 Deltas to have. And it's going to be strictly cyberspace operations. There's not going to be any more boss IT associated or mission comm support
proposal development you can outsource
associated with the cyberspace squadrons in the future. So to give you an example, Buckley several years ago made the decision that they were going to lay down the blueprint for what cyberspace squadron and an IT flight with ITAS would look like. So what they've done is they broke it into 3 buckets. They broke it into the boss IT bucket, which is Nipper, SIPRNet, and basically your basic comm support to the base. Then there's the mission comm piece, which for Buckley primarily focused around SATCOM. And so they have stood up a DET today, but next summer it will stand up as a squadron reporting to Del 4. That'll provide all mission comms for Delta 4. And that'll be a separate, it's not a comm squadron, but it's a SATCOM squadron that'll provide support to Del 4. And then you have the boss IT flight along with the ITAS, Enterprise IT as a Service, has outsourced there at Buckley. And then you have the 62nd Cyberspace Squadron, which is strictly focused on standing up their MDT and providing DCO space to the SIBR's mission systems. And that's how the future construct of what will presumably reside in Delta 6 in the future as we transition these other other comm squadrons to be cyberspace squadrons in the future. All right, so as we look at this today, only about 15% of what we intend to do has transitioned to be cyberspace squadrons. We still have about 85% left. And when you look at that block over there that says future Space Force cyberspace squadrons, those squadrons are unable to transition today at this point because they don't have any more capacity to give to stand up and do cyberspace work. They're heavily employed by boss IT and mission comm for those bases. So one of our big challenges today is how do we offload that base comm support missions? How do we offload those missions so we can transition that cyberspace workforce to focus solely on doing DCO for space? So lots of challenges ahead. Much of that is dependent on what goes on with ITAS, Enterprise IT as a Service. Right now, they're running into funding challenges with that. So Space Force is looking at some alternatives. I won't tell you that we've done anything to move out in that direction. We're just considering some different options if ITAS fails to get the funding it needs. But we have to figure out how to transition that cyberspace workforce to stand up to do MDTs and to do that DCO space mission. I miss anything, Shane?
Yeah.
All right, next slide. So I talked a little bit about this in the previous slide, but the key takeaway from this slide here is just that those cyber airmen today that are in space comm squadrons, those are the same airmen or space force professionals, as we're calling them today, providing mission comm and base comm infrastructure support. We need those bodies to do cyberspace operations. And that's part of what the CSI PAD calls out, both for the Air Force and now the Space Force. We're not doing anything different from the Air Force as we're transitioning. We're just trying to do it more expeditiously. And we have to figure out how do we offload those comm squadrons today of the mission comm and boss IT support, and then transition them into being cyberspace squadrons. So next slide. So HACCESAT, that was one of the questions that came up in the questions that Arrow sent to me. Amazing event. Basically, for the blue team, this was a 7-month effort that we had worked through on how we were going to monitor what these hackers were doing as they attempted to actually hack a satellite. The reach of the event was pretty big. Started out with 1,278 hacker teams. That was trimmed down to 8 top teams that actually got the opportunity to, for the prizes. There was cash prizes as well as, in my mind, the big prize, in most hackers' minds, the big prize was actually getting to take a moonshot. So once they took control of the satellite, they were able to turn the satellite and take a picture of the moon from the satellite. That was kind of the capitulation of the event. The blue team was in passive defense mode only. We were not authorized to provide any active defense. However, I will tell you that our main goals were to pull out TTPs, training, and new strategies for our DCO tool suite that's being developed by SMC. It's a DevSecOps developed product, and I will tell you it performed brilliantly in my mind. It collected all the logs. It was giving the operators alerts as to what the teams were doing, when they were doing it. As a matter of fact, one of the cool things that happened during the event was at the end, as the team who actually captured the satellite was beginning to turn the satellite to get their moonshot, it provided not just logs of what was going on, it provided, no kidding, actual pictures of them turning the satellite and taking pictures as they turned it to take their actual shot of the moon. We actually validated who the winning team was. We knew before the team even knew that they had executed the correct commands and were able to take that moonshot. So it was a great event from a passive defense perspective. I think the hacker teams.
How are you?
So the big challenge here for the
question for you.
hacker team. The big challenge here for the hacker teams was they not only had to know their cyberspace skills, but they also had to know the orbital mechanics of satellites and what that looked like. So it was a very challenging event for these hacker teams. I'll answer any other questions as we go through, but that's pretty much the synopsis of the HACCESAT event. We're looking forward to doing this again. SMC is basically trying to get it back on the calendar for next year and future year events, and is actually looking at potentially putting a satellite up in space that we can use for hacking purposes on the cyberspace side. So, next slide. All right. With that, I'll be happy to address any questions.
Okay, hey, Colonel Rockwell, Errol here. How you doing? It's good to hear your voice
Good.
and see you again on Zoom here. But hey, I know I sent you a list of questions, so we'll kind of start at the top and just work our way down. So the first question deals with the Tier 2 CSSP. So that's a Cybersecurity Service Provider for folks not familiar with that acronym. But basically, the first question is, how is the U.S. Space Force's efforts to become its own Tier 2 CSSP ongoing now, and then do you have any anticipated timeline when that may be put in place?
Actually, we do. And so progress is going well. We're about 65% compliant with the DoD's CSSP criteria at this point. But please remember that this CSSP is all about our mission systems. We're not looking to do anything on the admin Gensor side with this CSSP certification. Our package has been signed by General Burt. It's currently sitting with the DoD CIO for review. We anticipate that evaluation happening. I'm pushing hard for that to happen sometime in the spring of 21. But we're dependent on Joint Forces Headquarters Doden's schedule in FY21. But as we negotiate that with them right now, it's looking like it should be in the spring. To pass the DoD's criteria, you have to be somewhere in upwards of the 70 percentile range. So we're sitting at 65% today, and we're working through the rest of the criteria to get us somewhere between the 70 and 75% criteria.
Oh, great, thanks. And the next question deals with the CDCC space. So can you share how onboarding is going to integrate the additional space weapon systems into the Cyber Defense Correlation Cell for space out at Schriever? And then maybe just want to let folks know what weapon systems are already integrated in and what ones maybe are still on tap to be integrated into the CDCC.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to pass this over to Mr. Shane Swinson, since he has been the big advocate behind the CDCC and where we're at with that.
So Shane Swinson, 61st Cyber Squadron and CDCC Director. So we've got several mission systems that we're currently supporting out of the CDCC to include Satellite Control Network, GPS, parts of AEHF, MILSATCOM, as well as the MMSOC, and then also commercial augmentation services for AFSCN. As we continue to onboard additional mission systems, and we have systems in the queue, not surprisingly, it's a multi-month to year process to get capabilities onto systems and to pipe the data back to the CDCC. And this a myriad of challenges to include data ownership, data retention rights, the access to the systems, being treated as a trusted agent by a third party. So lots of interesting challenges and as one of the big challenges that we have compared to other agencies that have either attained their CSSP accreditation or in the processes of attaining it is we're different than a Gensor system, meaning that typically on a Gensor network you've got issues with scale and we have issues with complexity. Each of these systems we bring on board has their own unique network topologies, and none of them look the same. So that we're having to become experts on the system as we bring them on board, which is an interesting challenge. We do have a pretty robust onboarding process. It's a multi-gate process with entry and exit criteria. The big thing is making sure that the stakeholders and the supporting relationships are clearly identified and codified. And that includes, to no surprise, a lot of SLAs and a lot of interpersonal interactions. To no surprise with folks working in the cybersecurity, cyber defense realm, personality-based relationships are the biggest key to success. So that's kind of where we're at.
So I'll just foot stomp that. In my mind, that CSSP accreditation is kind of our slap the table to the mission system owner, saying that our cyber operators have the credentialing and the training required to get access to those mission systems. That gives us our credibility in my mind. So those are the challenges. Like I said, that's why our focus really is on that CSSP certification. So that when the mission system owners push back and say, no, we're not giving you access, we can say, yes, you are, and we're accredited to do so.
Oh, great. Thanks to both of you for that great insight there. Next question deals with basically asks, how will the U.S. Space Force DCO space mission align with the current United States Air Force defensive cyber operations to maintain a comprehensive cyber threat monitoring landscape?
So we're currently organizing just like the other CDCCs that are standing up. Ours is kind of a niche area just because we're focused on only the mission system portion of the DCO piece. So I would say that we're currently coordinating. Matter of fact, we've had several events over the past several weeks where we have taken intel from other CDCCs and pushed that out to our MDTs and our mission system owners and the SMC community to get after potential vulnerabilities within our own mission system. So it seems to be working really well as we partner with both the Air Force, ACC, AFCEA, and the other part of this is U.S. Space Command, right? How do we align with them as they stand up their JCC? I think much of the C2 portion will fall to Del 6, everything operationally and below, and then we'll take our initial taskings from AFCEA and U.S. Space Command JCC in the future.
Excellent. The next question deals with small business innovation research projects. Do you have any insights when U.S. Space Force may have its own small business innovation research projects that support your mission set?
So I think I've heard through some of my commercial channels that we are leveraging some of the SBIRS piece. I don't know at what detail, but I will tell you that last year, AFSpace pilot and 14th Air Force piloted the combat development divisions, which were really geared towards introducing DevSecOps and innovation as close to the tactical edge as possible. So we continue to do that. I will tell you from a cyberspace perspective, I am pushing DevSecOps immensely because as we saw evidently in the Hack-A-Sat event, we had operators and programmers sitting next to each other, and as certain events happened, as the operator said, "Hey, can you manipulate the tool to do this?" The programmers went in and they, on the fly, adjusted the tool to do certain things, and it was hugely successful. So as I talk with senior leaders, I continue to foot stomp with them that the location of the developers with the operators is key to the DevSecOps model in my mind. And we've got to make sure that the developers are no kidding with the operators as we do operations.
All right.
I think there's great values in the SBIR piece as we grow that in that area.
And then kind of tie into that, I'll jump down to one of the other questions that kind of ties in that a little bit. I know you're familiar with Platform One. What are your thoughts on Platform One? Are there any initiatives through Platform One that are supporting the Delta 6 mission that you're aware of?
So we're actually trying to partner with a lot of the things going on in Platform One and ABMS, the Unified Data Library, JCC2. One of the big initiatives that we're looking at is could we leverage ABMS Device One Secure View in Space Force to help us offload some of that boss IT workload in our comm squadrons? So absolutely looking at how do we leverage that innovation, partnerships with Mr. Preston Dunlap and Nick Shalon up at SAF AQ. So and then SMC is such a big partner in developing the tool suites that we're working on within the cyberspace Delta. So continuing to foster their initiatives, help them streamline some of the things going on their different programs, and being able to move some resources around and able to get after actually providing capability for the operators.
Oh, great, thanks. And then the next question it basically asks if you can share your insights on the role of the United States Space Force S6. And the main question was, are they going to have more of a? They're going to have what kind of role they have? Is it going to be a CIO role or a mix of things or something different or what?
So what the Space Force has done today is we've stood up a new office called the Chief Technology Innovation Officer. And I believe that'll be led at some point in the future by 17 Delta. I don't know that for sure, but based on, it's currently led by Major General Kreider. And so everything being developed from an innovative, agile perspective is being run through her office. We get input into what's going on, and she's absolutely seeking our feedback on what's working and what's not. Whether or not there'll be a 6, today they do have deputy 6s. Lieutenant General Saltzman is the USSF 710. They're trying to flatten the S staff structure, or the old A staff, J staff structures. They're trying to flatten that in the Space Force. Do we actually need it anymore? Do we need a 3, 6, 7, 10, or is there another way to manage it more effectively? But today we do have it, and we do have a deputy 6 at the Space Force staff. That's Colonel Judge Smale. I'm sure many of you guys know John Smale, go by as Judge. And then at the Spock level, at the S36, Major General Burt does have a 3 deputy and a 6 deputy, and that 6 deputy is Colonel Hugh Wells, former NOD commander. So whether we'll have it in the future or not, yet to be determined. I think they're kind of looking at this Chief Technology Innovation Officer to see if that could be something different that we could use and leverage that's more innovative and agile.
No, thanks for those insights, Colonel Rockwell. And then had a question about the Hack a Satellite operation or event that you guys had. So really, just to kind of clarify, is that Hack a Satellite efforts like that, are those going to fall under Delta 6's responsibility or role, or would that be more of SMC responsibility or a shared responsibility between the two organizations?
Really, I think it primarily falls into SMC and AFRL's. Set that up. I think we'll always be, I hope we'll always be invited to provide that either passive or active defense as they set those events up in the future.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. I got one live question here for you here in the chat function here in Zoom. So it asked, as the U.S. Space Force stands up its MDTs, the Mission Defense Teams, are you leveraging the existing toolkits that the 16th Air Force developed, or will you be creating more U.S. Space Force specific capabilities with the MDTs?
We're actually using both. We are using the tools that have come over from the Air Force side. But we're actually more focused on DevSecOps and a tool suite called Manicore that SMC's developed for us. That's the tool suite we used in the Hack-A-Sat event. And the feedback from my, no kidding, young lieutenants, captains who were the guys on the ground floor, they said it just crushed anything CVA Hunt could do.
No, great. Thanks a lot, Colonel Rockwell. And I think that's into my questions. Just again, want to thank you for your time, your willingness to support our virtual event. I'm going to pass the baton back to Vanessa and let her close this out. But thanks a lot again for your time.
Yeah, glad to be here. Excited to be here. Partner with you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, Arrow, I think we maybe got one more question when you were rapid.
When I was flapping my yapper. So real quick, Colonel Rockwell asked, will each Space Delta have their own contracting offices and source selection authority, or will that only reside at the 2 garrison commands?
So that's a great question, and some of the things we're working through right now with the Spock is what does our staffs on the Deltas look like? Because we're supposed to be strictly operationally focused, but obviously our feedback and input into the acquisition process and what kind of tools we use is imperative as we move forward. we've talked about, do we keep our OSSs in the deltas, or do we transition them to more of an S-staff structure? I think we're going to have the freedom to make that decision at the delta level, whether we have an OSS or an S-staff. Since we didn't have an OSS in Delta 6 or 7, we don't have those resources to stand up an S-staff. So we're working through with Spock on where do we get those resources to stand up an S-staff, which goes to the question as to whether or not will we have our own contracting office. I think at some point, I would hope that we would have a contracting officer to provide just expertise from the contracting side of the house as we move forward, because there's a lot of places I can get in trouble from a contracting perspective if I don't have that expertise in-house advising me. So
No,
hopefully
great.
that answers the question.
No, thanks. I'm looking through the chat to see if anything else popped in here real quick before I get back to Vanessa. But I don't see anything else new in here, Vanessa. So I guess I'll back over to you then, okay?
Yeah, I saw that last one come in at the last minute, and it's like, that one's a good one. So we'll have to ask that. All right.
Hopefully I answered it. Hopefully I answered it.
I mean, hope is a strategy, right?
It is. It is.
Well, so
hope is not a method, as I had a mentor tell me.
Hope is not a method. I don't know. These days, you never know, right? So, Colonel Rockwell, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come and talk to us today. I think that's given us way more insight into what's really going on, between Delta 6 and Space Force, and everybody's very interested in how this is all playing out and what it's starting to shape up to look like. So appreciate you being here. Of course, if this was an in-person event, I would be handing you a coin right now, but thanks to the current situation, I can't do that. So I think I'm going to have to invite you to lunch somewhere and pass you a coin here very soon.
Sounds great. I would love to have lunch with both you and Phil.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got to do that soon. So again, as a reminder, our next event is the 19th of November. We'll be sending out some more information about that very shortly. Otherwise, this concludes our virtual event for today.
So VJ, could I just put a promotion out there for Colonel Brashear?
Yeah, absolutely.
He is doing amazing work up there in Buckley. And if you want to know what's going on at the tactical level with the MDTs and training, and Buckley is really the epicenter for that. 61st Cyber Squadron is the epicenter for the CSSP and the CDCC and what we're doing there. But Buckley and 62nd Cyberspace Squadron is really, I can't tell you how proud I am of both squadrons and the efforts that they are leading as we stand this up in the Space Force. So that's my plug for the 62nd and Lieutenant Colonel Brave Brashear next month. I think he's going to knock it out of the park. He'll probably hit it out farther than I did. So
thanks, Rocky. Appreciate that. So, otherwise, this concludes our event. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see everybody next month. Thank you.